Oh my God. I've done it. Real university supervised research. Okay, well, this isn't actually my project. This is bills for my wife's phone for tax purposes. And you know what's really cool? I got gold standard statistical significance. It's a science thing. We'll get to that. We'll figure it. But you know what's really cool? I had legit beef with something going on in this world. And instead of getting on my internet soapbox and spewing perhaps misguided ideas, which are still allowed, and I have tons of fun doing it, don't get it twisted, I instead did the work, took months, got real world data from actual people, and have what's called evidence for my idea. Crazy. So instead of my flimsy internet soapbox, I have like a deep trench with scaffolding proof of my idea, which I choose to share with you on Waxing Prosaic. But first, a warning. Serious warning going on here. This is very controversial, divisive stuff. Don't get emotionally wrapped up in it. Please try to use your analytical brain to dig deeper and see what's going on underneath the hood. That's the point of my research. Please meet me there and it will be more fruitful. Please. Because you're going to see your analytical brain will quickly figure out that this is a unity project. I love y'all. I want to make the world better for all of us. Okay, so I shall now give some thematic context by way of personal life situation proxy. I was lucky to become a father in the last year. All the things, cliche, all of it. That's another podcast. During all the doctor checkups, my wife got tagged for high blood pressure consistently. This is a marker for potential preeclampsia, which of course leads to eclampsia, not just a clever name. And this can be fatal, not just for baby, but also mom. The most serious stuff. In order to combat this, doctors prescribed aspirin to my wife. Aspirin opens up blood vessels and therefore more room for the blood to travel, therefore less blood pressure, therefore no preeclampsia. Absolutely, slam dunk, great, yes, of course. Now, I am in university for psychology, and in class, like right around this time, like the universe was telling, we talked about how aspirin, prolonged use, nukes our gut microbiome. I don't know why we're talking about this in psychology class, but I have the slides to prove it. I don't know. Prolonged use of aspirin can interrupt our natural gut chemicals that protect us from things like ulcers and stomach bleeding. And on top of that, we are learning more and more how our gut biome is our everything when it comes to health. It feels like a panacea because like it kind of is. It is our pathway to wellness. It is from the inside. It's kind of beautiful. And I ain't mad at aspirin. Everything has a cost benefit, right? And I knew, being a little hippy-dippy and a critical thinker, that, we could offset all the issues that aspirin are going to cause with prebiotics. So we did, which would preserve my wife's gut biome and give my child their gut biome. Everything has a trade-off. So even without the prebiotics, when it came to cost benefit with my wife's situation, preeclampsia, potential harm to my family, potentially no family at all. Ugh, I don't even want to go there. Or having gut problems, it's a slam dunk. 1,000 times out of 1,000, I would encourage my wife, and she's autonomous and makes her own decisions, but I would hope that she would take the aspirin, 100%. So where's the beef? Well, we got to remember that these medical professionals gave my wife sound medical advice that may have saved her life. However, they strategically, because I gave them the benefit of the doubt, they know all this gut biome stuff, they strategically framed their suggestion positively. This lacked informed consent. We're getting at it. which is giving somebody the entire story before suggesting an intervention. I personally think informed consent is very important. And my study suggests that a whole lot of you do too. Let's wax prosaic. When we go to the doctor, we are hella vulnerable. And I don't just mean because sometimes they got their finger up our butts. I'm glad my prostate's fine. I'm sorry I came, Dr. Shum. Yes, and we're vulnerable because we have no idea what they're talking about. It is our body, and we don't understand the condition going on within us. We don't understand the things that they're giving us, these drugs. How do they make them? What do they do? And these are very high stakes. There's potential life at stake here. Wow, steak. I keep saying steak. So let's lower the stakes a little bit, okay? Let's use an analogy. A mechanic. For us lay people, a mechanic takes a car and does magic to it, that this combustible engine can move. I mean, it's all parts. It's mechanic. It's left brain. But still, it's incredible what they do. And we have a level of trust that they're fixing it, diagnosing it correctly, and not like ripping wires out of it so we come back in the next couple of weeks so they can make more money. Now, the analogy definitely went off the rails because I do not think medical professionals are doing that. But what I'm getting at is one of the greatest cliches of being an adult. We all talk amongst ourselves of what mechanics we can trust. I've done it multiple times. I rarely ask, do you know a mechanic who's good at fixing things? I kind of assume that. I want the mechanic I can trust, who's not just going to try to make money off me. Not that medical professionals are doing that. We're in the analogy right now. So mechanics' livelihood isn't as much based on how good they are at fixing cars, though it kind of is. It's mainly based off of communal trust. That's where the analogy is important. All right, let's flip to the back of the book, to the glossary here. Okay, we're going to find our terms. Let's get our language set. When a medical professional communicates anything to you, prescription, what's wrong with you, anything, they have 3 different options, 3 different strategies to do so. Number 1, positive framing. They only tell you the good stuff. So in the preeclampsia case, they say, take an aspirin every single day. It'll help you with blood pressure. You'll be good to go. It's great, right? But there's number 2, which is full disclosure framing. It tells you the whole story. This is where the informed consent thing comes in. They tell you the good and the bad. So in my preeclampsia case, it's going to be, take this aspirin. It's going to help you with blood circulation. However, just so you know, it's going to hurt your gut biome. Therefore, you can supplement using probiotics like we did. The third strategy, negative framing. Now, we're just going to kind of brush past this one pretty quick because, like, what doctor is going to only negatively frame, like, anything, especially a pharmaceutical intervention? Like, well, that being said, we are in the digital age where, like, the information age, we can look up anything, right? So we probably present doctors with, hey, I want to take this prescription. And then they might come back with, well, that super Viagra is going to make your hard for like 6.5 weeks straight. You don't have the pulmonary strength to be able to do that. I need super Viagra. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to focus on positive framing, full disclosure framing. Preeclampsia, they chose to tell my wife, take the aspirin, positive framing. And I give them the benefit of the doubt. These people are medical professionals. They know what aspirin does to the gut biome. And they could have just suggested probiotics to take to curb it, which we did. So the question is, why? Why did they choose to do this? This is where we're digging deeper, folks. Critical thinking. Let's get curious. Before I begin slinging the inferred dirt, I want to make one thing uber clear. Medical professionals, and we're going to get to government as well, are not cartoon villains, okay? They're not sitting there rubbing their hands together all excited. I'm going to ruin this woman's gut biome. No, absolutely not. The truth is, these people do care, and they're trying to solve really big problems at scale, population level. So we got to give some grace, okay? Established. But we are still allowed to question their strategies. Both can be true at the same time. Important. We need to keep context going. Let's understand why medical professionals might choose positive framing only. We're going to start micro and then go macro. In my personal case, I guarantee these medical professionals looked at what my wife was going through and they ran the probabilities. Okay, so if we tell this woman to take the aspirin, her gut biome might get a little ruined and maybe the kid too, but they're not going to take the aspirin forever. Their lives will be saved and eventually their gut biome will bounce back. So it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle, but it's better than them being dead. Absolutely, unequivocally. When you dig into it a little bit with the probability, death or a muted biome for a while, you can see why it's important that they made sure that she took the aspirin. A little hint of what's to come. Moving on. So let's go from my N of 1 all the way out to like an N of probably at the time 25 million or so. In 1949 in Canada, there was a goiter endemic. Goiters are a misfiring of the thyroid and it swells up and it's like, those neck pillow things for broken or strained necks. Don't, cognitohazard warning, look it up if you want, but just take my word for it. Scientists noticed that the majority of these cases were around the Great Lakes area, where I'm from, lucky I don't have it, which was on glaciated soil and was lacking iodine. Eureka! We shall give the people iodine. But how do you give people iodine at a population scale? Like you mail out pills? Eureka! 2, we'll put iodine in their water. No, salt! We'll put it in their salt. And that's what they did. The Canadian government put iodine into table salt, legally still is, and they cured the goiter endemic in a single generation. Not only that, iodine is a neural enhancer, it's brain food, and it has upticked Canadian IQs. They figure by as much as 15 points. I gotta get me some salt. Oh, I just happened to. E equals MC cubed. Wait, that doesn't quite sound right. Must not be iodized. So slam dunk, right? Yes, 99.99%. On a physiological level, even a psychological level, gotten smarter. Yes, this was a huge success. However, the way in which they decided to do this raises a little bit of concerns in terms of morals and ethics. They forced it upon us. We're getting into the meat and potatoes now, friends. Kind of interesting, right? For my Canadian audience. Now you understand why in the grocery store boxes of salt say iodized salt, right? This is from a government manipulation from the 40s, which is interesting. So the government is mandated. They have to disclose that there's iodine in the salt. However, noticeably missing from the packaging is why. Why is there iodine? So yes, it's important, but this was an intervention carried out in the 40s when it was relevant to, the cultural milieu of this thing, right? So they have to disclose that there's iodine in the salt, but they don't have to disclose why. They don't have to disclose the positive sides of it, and they don't have to disclose the negative side of it. This is where we need to make another important contextual piece here. Everything has a trade-off. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything that we ingest, everything that we inject, even the things that we topically put on ourselves, it's called transdermal absorption, alters our body chemistry. Everything. And we need to be educated and cognizant and aware of this. Did you just put down that neon Dorito? Everything in moderation. Cool Ranch. When you get the chip with all the seasoning on it. Oh. Anyways, but you are what you eat. So now back to the iodine. Ingesting too much iodine can back-asswardsly create the symptoms that the iodine is treating. Swear to God. You can become hyperthyroid or hypothyroid. Hyper means too many hormones out of whack going all over the place. Hypo means not enough hormones going all over the place. Also, we can get iodine poisoning, which has a whole whack of symptoms which are pretty yucky. And I think there's a metallic taste. It's like you throwing up. It's crazy, right? But don't throw out your salt just yet. I still got mine. Look, getting smart. You would need to ingest about 3 tablespoons of table salt a day, prolonged period of time, to even hit the ceiling of the acceptable amount of iodine intake. And if you're eating that much salt, the real problem you're going to run into is the hump on your back. You're going to look like a damn camel with all the water you're retaining. But there is more nuance here. People who suffer from Hashimoto's or hyper or hypothyroid to begin with, they have a lower threshold, of course, than the rest of us. And the packaging says nothing about it. You take this into account. All of a sudden, we got an interesting little discussion, don't we? And to add a little bit more intrigue, from 1967 to 2003, Taiwan did the same thing as Canada. They had an iodine deficiency. They put it in their salt. However, on their packaging, they added a little disclaimer that said, iodine is a necessary nutrient, but if you got thyroid problems, consult a doctor before consuming. Interesting. And then the next layer is just, this is FYI, they, as I said, they stopped in 2003 because Taiwan wanted to sell their salt globally. So they removed the iodine. Scientists did a study 10 years later. Their people are iodine deficient. So just an interesting socialism, capitalism, big government, little government. Taiwan dropped iodine for the money, and their people have suffered with their health. This is a whole other podcast. I implore you to look into it. I am going to as well. It's neat. Whew. Okay, I went deep on the history. It was interesting, but we're going to speed run the rest of the reasons why medical professionals might only positively frame interventions. Decision fatigue. This is a real thing. We only have so many decisions in us. And I know you've felt this before. You've ever been asked something and you're like, right now I can't. And then you get some rest and you're like, boom, easy. That was easy. Tech cool dudes like Steve Jobs, they recognize this and they build their day around having to make as few decisions as possible, including even wearing a uniform. Remember toward the end of Steve Jobs' life, he only wore a black turtleneck with those awful, it was cool at the time, jeans. That was so in the morning, he could just grab his uniform, put it on, and start making important decisions. I hope he had multiple versions. That turtleneck must have, forget mock turtleneck, more like sock turtleneck. That was lame, but I'm a dad, it's okay. Let's get crazy. In times of crisis, efficiency leading to compliance might save lives. COVID-19 is still very recent memory. I chose not to get vaccinated. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm allowed to say that right now without being tarred and feathered. We'll get to that. But I still have faith in humanity. And I genuinely believe, for the most part, that is what was behind the way things were handled. They wanted people to be safe and healthy. And I'll have more to say, but we'll move on for now. Anyone who's ever watched an episode of the show knows that I love the evolutionary lens, so let's apply it. Medical professionals, even governments, it's tribal signaling. They are a chain of hierarchy. They are above us. They're specialists in their field. So it ups our odds of survival to listen to them. They know that. They tap into that old wiring in us. And thus they frame it positively, and then we go ahead with them. We trust their lead. Okay, we get it. That's enough with the context. We all agree, right? We all agree that the intention is good. Efficiency and care are real motivators, okay? And we all agree that very bright people are running probabilities, okay? Enter my study. I'm currently working through my undergrad in psychology at 40 years old. Why am I doing this to myself? Math, really? Anyways, the big bottleneck class, that's hard to say, big bottleneck class is our research assignment. It's the biggest thing we'll do in undergrad, unless you're doing honors, which I can't do because I have a 1-year-old coming up to at home and I would never see her. So the perfectionist in me, it's killing me. The assignment's 25% of your mark. You got to do real world research, APA paper, the whole thing supervised by your professor. How do you pick what you do? Well, I just took all that stuff I just laid out for you and I designed an experiment. Wait. I'm going to put on my science hat. Here it is. Nothing says science like giver. When I'm wearing this hat, fact. Empirical evidence backed fact. When I'm not wearing it, conjecture. We get to have fun. So this podcast is about to get real dry, but I promise to try to make, the scientific method and evidence fact-based truth fun for you. Wait. Before let me just get out some. I believe Santa Claus is real. I believe that the dream world is our actual existence, and this is like some weird projection. And I believe Santorum tastes better than Tang, and they should actually switch names. It actually make a lot more sense. All right, I'm ready to drop in. Science. The purpose of my study was to pit positive framing against full disclosure framing. To do this, I designed an escalating 6 government-imposed health measures, going from least invasive to most invasive. The first 3 were real world in some jurisdictions, Canada. The last 3 were totally made up because I wanted things to go over the edge. And because this was real research, there was a research ethics board that approved all of this because everything was full disclosure. There's a little bit of meta going on here. My study was full disclosure. 3 real world health mandates, 3 made up ones. The first one was milk being fortified with vitamin D, salt having iodine infused in it. We know this one. The third one was fluoride in water. A little hot button, stick with me. The fourth one, remember these are made up now, is sunscreen in apples. The fifth one, nicotine in toothpaste. And the piece de resistance, the last one, microchips in vaccines. A little crazy, right? It was approved. Like I said, this was an experiment. And that means there's a manipulation. So there were 2 different versions of the survey made. Version A was positive framing only. And again, all of these were backed, not only like just saying, oh, these are real science. No, I actually cited the studies, the peer-reviewed papers stating these health benefits of these interventions. For the first one, vitamin D helps with calcium absorption, immune support, and muscle health. For the second one, iodine, you know this one well, right? It's good for neurodevelopment, but also regulating thyroid health. This is true. Number 3, fluoride. Fluoride helps prevent tooth decay. So they'll sometimes put it in public water supplies to help people's teeth. Number 4, we're into the made up interventions, right? So now remember I said apples with sunscreen. The practical side of this is injecting apples, or maybe there's a GMO way of doing it. I didn't have to get into actually doing it. Putting antioxidants into apples because on a cellular level, antioxidants make cells more robust to UV light. So it's like sunscreen in an apple. The 5th intervention. This one is nicotine in toothpaste. If we have nicotine in toothpaste, we're going to take way better care of our teeth. Am I right? We're going to be addicted to the stuff. We're going to be brushing all the time. So technically, better oral health, and nicotine is also a cognitive enhancer. This is true. The peer-reviewed papers say so. Number 6 is the crazy one. Microchips in vaccines. Clearly fake. This is not real. My thinking was that you put microchips in vaccines, you can do live health tracking. So that was the positive benefit. Again, full disclosure, this is not real. I told my subjects this is not real, but what do you think? So that's version A of the survey. So then there was a version B of the survey that went into full disclosure, informed consent. This version of the survey still gave those same positive aspects that I just gave you and laid out for all 6 interventions. And it also gave the negative aspects afterwards. So there was still like a primacy recency thing, which is fine. I mean, that's part of the research. I wanted both things in there. That's what full disclosure does. And it's okay to put the roses before the thorns. We often do that in this show. And again, all the negative aspects of these interventions, peer-reviewed. I used real science in order to develop these. There was full disclosure, and I went through an REB. So intervention number 1, vitamin D. Long-term high-dose exposure to vitamin D can result in hypercalcemia. This can cause an excess of calcium in the blood. Intervention number 2, iodine. We already went through it. Hypothyroid, iodine poisoning. Moving on. Number 3, fluoride. Hot button, hot button, hot button. But these are peer-reviewed papers. This is real. And out of China, there was a study, meta-analysis, stating that prolonged high-dose exposure to fluoride can result in neurological deterioration. Fact. Unless disproven, of course. Intervention number 4, we're into the made up stuff now. Again, full disclosure. Too many antioxidants over too long a period of time can result in certain cancers, gastrointestinal issues, and heart disease. Intervention number 5, nicotine in toothpaste. Now, big spoiler, nicotine is addictive. That was actually the positive part of it I said for oral hygiene, but it also increases heart rate and raises blood pressure. And here we go, coming up the rear. This is fake. Microchips in vaccines. Remember, we said it was good for health tracking. The funny thing is, the only negative thing I said may cause skin irritation at site of injection. Oh, sorry, I should... Listen, who says that science can't be fun? I come up with this bombastic, crazy thing to put at the end of my survey, and the craziest one of them all has the smallest negative ramifications. Science can be fun, right? And all right, we're on our way. We're doing science. We got 2 surveys, all right? Technically a quasi-experiment, and it's between subjects, which means that we have different people filling out the different surveys. The same person will not fill out both surveys, right? We don't want any kind of a bias, right? Order bias. That's the thing. So we purposely made it between subjects. But what are we measuring here? Well, I'm glad you asked, or it's a storytelling technique. I called it the consent threshold. As people move through the survey, on every single question, they are asked to select either I consent or I do not consent to the mandate. So, question 1, milk fortified with vitamin D. They are asked, do you consent? Do you not consent? If they choose they consent, they move on to the next level of mandates, which I personally thought that the scale, it was a continuum traveling up. If they continue to say yes, they continue on. As soon as they say that they do not consent, the survey terminates. So this could be the shortest survey you ever do. Do you want fortified milk? No? Boom, survey over. The percent that they finish the survey is our consent threshold. And remember, we had 2 different groups, positive framing, full disclosure framing. So what I was really after What percentage of the survey did the average person complete? Science. And in science, we gotta make our guesses, right? We can't just run a survey and see what happens. Well, I guess you can, but it's way more fun to create a hypothesis. I actually had multiple, so hypotheses. It's fun to guess. Science can be fun. See, I still got the hat on. It's fun. All right, so my hypotheses were, and I'm going to read it because this is lifted directly from my paper. It was hypothesized that participants who received positively framed mandates would complete a higher proportion of consent items than those who received full disclosure framing. It was also predicted that females would show higher consent rates than males, and that digital natives would show higher consent rates than digital immigrants. Now, further context, just so my hypotheses make sense, especially this part. Digital native is somebody who's born into the internet. So for my specific study, it was people born 1991 and younger. Digital immigrants, me, old people who were born pre-internet and knew life pre-internet. I was interested in studying how the consent was going to work between the generations. This is interesting, right? It's getting cool. It's exciting. All right, this is a sound quasi-experiment. The only thing left to do is get it out there. I need people. And I went so hard on getting this. I'm so proud of myself. The power, meaning how many people I needed, I actually ran stats to find the power that I needed. It was only around like 100 people. I got an N276. That means 276 people did my survey beginning to end. Woo! Which means I got a ton of data to work with. Lucky guy in the science world. So, without further ado, what is ado? I say that every time. Here are my results. I got statistical significance on all of my variables. Statistical significance mean that there's only about a 5% chance that I got a false positive. False positive means that I got results that are totally by chance and not actually representative of the population. All of my variables, 5% is the line, all of my variables, there's an under 1% chance that it was completely at random. This is called evidence. This is called real evidence, people. Whew, exciting. I'm sure you noticed in my hypotheses, I kind of got off the beaten path a little bit, right? I just wanted to study positive versus full disclosure framing. But since I was in the weeds collecting data, I might as well get other variables to try to find more specifics, right? I mentioned sex. I was studying males, females. I mentioned non-binary, other representing gender people as well, but there just wasn't enough to power to get their responses. So they were noted. They're in my paper. You can read it. And I was also studying the generations thing, right? Older people versus younger people with consent. And then there were other things that I was really excited about. Namely, I have a hunch that Americans would consent less than Canadians. But I didn't have enough people. So I couldn't run true statistics to know that it was accurate. So science, you slough it off. That's how it works. So I'm going to keep this very brief because it's superfluous, but it's interesting. Younger people had a 12% higher consent threshold than older people. Older people are a little more like, and not so used to filling out constant terms and conditions and etc. Anyways, you can read the paper as to why I think these things. But just know that younger people consented more, okay? On the gender side of things, men had a 9% higher consent threshold than women. Now, where science, you gotta, you a priori make these hypotheses. That means you gotta wear egg on your face when you're wrong. With statistical significance, I was wrong. I thought that women were going to have a higher consent threshold. And then I dug a little bit deeper post hoc, and I saw a bunch of peer-reviewed studies about how women were less vaccinated during COVID than men. This is mind-blowing. I'll very briefly tell you why. There is a ton of literature on how men are way more risk-taking and women are a lot more agreeable. I inferred, meaning I took evidence and reason, and I put those together thinking that women would consent more to medical interventions from the government. I was wrong. There are some studies that I cite in my paper in the discussion section if you want to read further into this. But we're going to leave it at that because it's not what has to do with this podcast. It's just interesting. So this is what we're here for, people. The positively framed version of the survey had a 41.7% consent rate. The full disclosure version of the survey had a 31.7% consent rate. I have evidence and goosebumps that is a 10% downtick in consent when the general population has all of the information. Therefore, my study suggests that withholding medical information changes behavior. And just that statistically significant number I was talking about, 5% chance of a false positive, for this specific variable, 0.2% that I got these results at random. Let that sink. This is evidence again. However, and this is the biggest however, because this is like a meta however, dig deep into my however. My study had limitations. Of course it did. I'm a human. No thing has ever been made straight of the warped timbers of humanity. I'm not saying I was being nefarious. I'm just saying there are flaws. Yes, my study was overpowered. I got so many responses. However, think about it. Like, I'm trying to run a research study with no money, which even has its own incentives. Therefore, a lot of my participants, my subjects, were people from my social circle who are going to be same socioeconomics, like in my world, wondering, they have a personal connection to me, wondering what I'm trying to do, although I disclose nothing to them. I asked them to do it with no explanation. Also, on top of that, I put it out to my social media audience, which is pretty decent. I love my people. But again, they kind of know me. They know what I'm up to. They filled it out. The cohort of psychology students at my university, we're all reciprocity, right? We're all helping each other do each other's surveys. This is a flaw of my survey. Furthermore, I went on Reddit and I went on one of the, I barely use Reddit, one of those threads, and I found other undergrad students who were running surveys. And again, reciprocity. So that's a younger skewed audience, although you can check all my numbers. They're all in my paper. But still, I'm just saying, I even got some like data from like the Middle East, right? And I'm making comments about Canada and the United States. And this is just real life, right? I'm human. This is flawed. I have cold, hard evidence, but it's got issues. It deserves further looking into. All things do. You see the meta part of my however? And that's just where my study came from. Even furthermore, my survey was unsupervised. I wasn't watching people do the survey. I was trusting them because they were self-reporting. That is worth mentioning. Also, I love that my survey had hypothetical government interventions. However, that needs to be called out because these hypotheticals were a little bombastic. People may not have taken my survey seriously at all. And even piggybacking on top of that, can you imagine if I ran this survey in a lab and I had people actually in the real world being offered a cup of milk with vitamin D, some salt with iodine in it, water with fluoride? All of a sudden, we're getting real world actual emotions. People are going to actually ingest this stuff. I'm willing to bet, I'm willing to bet that that would alter my results. But it's still evidence. And I couldn't make microchip vaccines for the live experiment anyways. Yet. And you will notice that I keep calling my survey a quasi-experiment, like a kind of experiment, because a real full-on experiment uses real full-on randomization. My survey was randomized, but I used a little hack. I had people, even birthdays, odd birthdays, got the 2 different surveys. Right there, I'm tinkering. There could be biases. There could be cultural difference. There's whole, like, when people, that is a concern. And therefore, I cannot call it a full-on experiment. And you know why? Because the software I was using was such a pain. I worked so hard, so much research, so much AI, so much coding, trying to get it to just totally randomize, and it wouldn't. So it's quasi. And I have to admit that. I have to disclose, full disclosure. Are you trusting me a little bit more? Okay, that's the end of my survey. Pretty proud of it. Okay, here we go. But I want to talk to you like a civilian here. Real world. I got to make sure it's off. Okay, hold on. Sneezes are mini orgasms. Just so God can watch us and laugh, making our O face in public. It's definitely off. We're good. But in all seriousness, can you see the meta way I was telling you about my survey? I was totally vulnerable, totally human. And I told you I had evidence that would prove my point. And yet I delivered it to you quite consciously in a fair way. I gave you the roses and the thorns, and I'm going to leave it with you to decide. But the beautiful part about doing that is I bet that I built some trust. Yes, I may have lost some of you. Some of you might have been like, oh, never mind. You heard my whole spiel, all these great numbers, all this. Wow, he really did a great survey. But then he told me all this negative stuff about it. And I'm like, well, then who cares? But you know what? I'm, as the researcher, willing to let you go, because downstream, when I do another piece of research, you're going to be like, this guy's going to be honest with me. I'm going to listen to what he has to say. And I trust you to make excellent, informed decisions. See how I'm bringing it together? Oh, okay, we're going to come back now to my preeclampsia story, because you've been primed, including all of this consent stuff, because now I'm going to use the internet, what it's really for, completely unhinged, subjective opinions. We don't need this thing. Let's go. This is going to be controversial. COVID-19. All of you just tensed up, didn't you? I know. Let's push through. We got to look past the controversy, all the stuff I primed you with. Here we go. Yes, I can now truthfully say I had hesitations about the COVID vaccine. I cannot believe I can disclose that, but I did. However, I was not just like, this vaccine's coming, I'm not getting it. No. And I have proof by way of how I treated the other community guidelines. I social distanced. I was in my bubble. I quarantined for 8 weeks out of my life for moving and visiting people. I followed all protocols, wore a mask everywhere. I did it. But when the vaccine was coming out and I was asked to inject something, that came out very quickly, but this is not about any of in the weeds medical stuff. I thought, I need to do due diligence on this. So I did. And I have receipts. You can look through my history. I listened to both sides. I read as much as I could. I listened to as much as I could. And I did, in fairness, just for my life situation, I lived in the middle of nowhere in the country in Nova Scotia. I had the time and resources and wouldn't endanger people by doing this. Just a little preface. So I'm doing my research, actual medical literature. I'm listening to podcasts from both sides. It's so heated. I'm so confused. But you know what made the decision 100% for me? A commercial. Actually, well, technically 2 commercials. I swear to God. I was listening to a Hot Button podcast and a commercial came on. And it was one of those hilarious pharmaceutical drug commercials. We all make fun of them. They're so funny. We're like, everybody's happy as hell. Everybody's like having a great time, pushing each other, running around a field. And then at the end, it says, may cause dizziness, may cause headache, may cause leaky anus, may cause death. And I don't know about you, but I'm glad that these exist. Right? I don't want to take something and die. And just like from a human moral, like ethics perspective, I think if somebody's manufacturing something that could kill you, I think you should have to disclose that. Am I right? That's not crazy. I know pretty much everybody's going to be on board with that one. Come on. Unless you're like a hardcore capitalist, going back to the Taiwan thing. Moving on. We all know the commercials. I'm going to read Humira, Vraylar, Journey, PM. These drugs have to say they may kill you. And here's the really interesting thing that's relative to all of this. The amount of cases, the threshold that these drugs have to hit to, by law, by the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, to disclose that this drug might kill you. 1, if they have 1 reported case, obviously death is the most serious of the symptoms, but if they have 1 reported case, they have to disclose that this drug might kill you. Sucks for the pharmaceutical company. Your sales are, I don't know, probably going to drop if something can kill you, but I think that that's fair. Okay, so back to my situation. I hear this commercial for the typical, stereotypical pharmaceutical drug ad. Hilarious. I have a laugh. The very next commercial, this is like the universe was doing this to me. The next commercial was the Canadian government. This was the government of my country coming on and saying, please, well, paraphrasing, but it basically did say this, go get vaccinated, go get the COVID-19 vaccination. Cool. Like the public health officials have every right to put their message out there and they're trying to help people and save lives. Totally cool. I approve. But the commercial ended. Dead air. Nothing. The commercial just ended. Go get the COVID-19 vaccine. Nothing. Well, where's the warning? The company, the pharmaceutical company, if 1 person died, you have to say that it's a very extreme outcome. But the Canadian government, who enforces that, doesn't have to disclose. That's interesting. I was floored. I was genuinely floored by this. All of a sudden, I was reading actual medical literature out the window. All the podcasts I was listening to didn't matter. The fact that the government just had this double standard, I went, this is fishy. And I absolutely swore off the COVID-19 vaccine. And my God, the social ramifications of that at the time, now no one cared. At the time, I was a social pariah. I was poisonous. 81% of Canadians took the vaccine. It was pretty hard to be marginalized at that time. It hurt. It hurt a lot. But I had principles and I couldn't let this go. Despite all that pain, all these years later, I am so grateful that I stuck to these new principles that I didn't even realize I had. I just want to keep painting the picture though, because it all kind of comes together. Now on the Canadian government website, they are, full disclosure, I'm just going to read these. Okay, one sec. 47,010 total non-serious adverse effects from COVID-19 vaccines. 11,702 total serious adverse effects from the COVID-19 vaccines. And just a little reminder, Big Pharma has to disclose serious outcomes from their pharmaceuticals if one person suffers. The Canadian government's website on COVID-19 now states 24 different possible adverse effects from the COVID-19 vaccine. Their commercial that I heard that day that I decided, 0. One of the pillars of this show is credit where credit's due, even when it's inconvenient. I got to give big up to the government of Canada for being full disclosure now. That's super cool. They're putting it all out there for everyone to see. And I think that is also because all sides, all the things that I'm talking about, hard numbers from right now, obviously at the time I was trying to make this decision didn't exist because these needed to be tallied up. And this is now years later. Just want to be full disclosure here. Okay. However, I'm going to give the Canadian government and these pharmaceutical companies the benefit of the doubt that these are intelligent people. And just because they didn't have the data that they have now, I'm going to assume that they built a drug to inject into human beings without having an understanding. Again, I'm going to be super benevolent here. They must have known one. They must have at the time, I forget the other, remember I said 24 on the Canadian government website. They must have known one negative outcome from the COVID-19 vaccine. And yet they chose to disclose 0. Now, just to synthesize this entire cast of pods, we're wrestling with something very complicated and nuanced, right? That we're talking about personal liberties versus big government control against the backdrop of mass public safety. This is legit stuff. And again, my science hat is way off. I don't even know where it is. I may have burned it. It's so gone. So I'm going to go full internet conjecture here and go out on a limb and say that the Canadian government chose to positively frame the COVID-19 vaccine so maximum amount of people would get it. Shocker, right? And the cool thing is I can actually apply my research, my model to this, right? I can say with confidence, I have evidence that my study suggests that by the Canadian government only positively framing the COVID-19 vaccine, they got a 10% uptick in people taking the vaccine who otherwise wouldn't. Like I said, 0.1% of Canadians took the COVID-19 vaccine. I'm going to read numbers. That's 28,716,557 Canadians. Now, as my research suggests, if the Canadian government had used full disclosure strategies to disclose what was going on with these vaccines, we would have had only 71.1% of Canadians taking the COVID vaccine. Just to put that into hard numbers, that is 3,540,842 people who would have avoided this vaccine. I'm doing this research for you. Because you got manipulated. And that's a fact. That's a hard fact. Oh, and just a little, because I'm on my internet, soapbox here and I'm pissed, especially reliving this stuff. Where were my social justice warriors protecting me, a marginalized person? I was in only less than 20% of Canadians who got this vaccine, and I was manipulated to try to do so. Where were the social justice warriors protecting people like me? No, there was none. In fact, I was a plague rat. Bring it down. Let's get back to brass tacks. This is the fun part. The conjecture is the fun part. Sorry. Venting. Hypocrisy really gets me. But anyways, back to this. The preeclampsia thing, remember I said, these are medical professionals running probabilities, so they just give us the positive aspects. So I do, on an intellectual level, I understand what the Canadian government was doing. This was a virus. This was a pathogen that they were trying to contain. I'm assuming very bright people ran probabilities and they thought it's better that we get this extra 10% that my study suggests, instead of just, losing those people, and this could be potentially dangerous. I give the benefit of the doubt. It's more the social stuff that pisses me off. So yes, and I also just want to state that true existential crises for human beings, I think positive framing is advantageous. I just think COVID went a little bit off the rails. And I mean, hindsight's 2020. But anyways, and I do think there were extra shenanigans, but there's a whole other podcast. So governments, I'm just going to say COVID-19 was a missed opportunity. We're going to bring it back to the mechanic thing on this. Remember communal trust? COVID-19, you were myopic. You chose short-term compliance over long-term communal trust. In my opinion, if you were full disclosure with these vaccines that you rolled out very quickly, yeah, you may have lost 10%, but in the long run, you're going to be that mechanic people know that they can bring their car to, and you're not going to overcharge them, or the governmental version of that. You missed a chance to bond with your people, essentially. And here's the back-asswards part. With COVID, the 70%, those people who happily complied, they're always going to comply. The 10% in the middle, you're going to win them, you're going to lose them. The haters, they're always going to hate. However, I argue the way to get those haters is honesty. This has long-term ramifications of uniting countries, the world, people, is honesty and integrity. Remember I said this is actually a unity project? Yeah, the higher-ups being honest with us unites us. Crazy, right? Oof. And this goes beyond medical interventions. In my opinion, a unified country that trusts their government is going to be prosperous. People who are empowered and feel safe with the people over top of them are going to produce more, be more generative, be more happy. This is a big deal, honestly. All this coming from my little survey. We talk so much about systematic problems. This is one of them. And seriously, if I was just sitting down for a beer with somebody who's in the government with the COVID-19 thing, or who's a medical practitioner giving positively only advice, I would say this. We're big people. We're big people and we deserve all the information. Have faith in the general population. Have faith in us. Yeah, I'm not an MP and I don't have an MD at the end of my name. I'm not Dr. Gray, although I'm trying to become a psychologist, but that's besides the point. But I deserve information. I'm a parent right now, and one of my favorite pieces of advice that I've received for rearing this kid is that kids aren't afraid of information. They're way more afraid of the unknown. And governments and medical practitioners, I urge you to keep that in mind when dealing with your people. We want to know what's up, and we're big enough and brave enough and smart enough to make educated decisions. Informed consent. Okay, and just anecdotally, Canadian government, I'm speaking directly to you. I was such a good soldier. Like I said, with COVID-19 specifically, I did all the protocols. And honestly, before COVID-19, I just had so much faith in the government. And you've eroded that. My critical thinking has now gone through the roof. And I'm incredibly hesitant for anything you have to present to me. And that all comes from that decision. I was thinking about getting that COVID-19 vaccine, and you single-handedly botched that. And you've now created somebody who's making this podcast and doing this research to do my point, even though I'm probably just screaming into the void, to spread the word of what informed consent is and that people deserve to demand it. We deserve full disclosure. I wasn't that person before this. You did this to me. Truth. I think you can do better. We can do better. How does this sound? Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. Here are the good sides. Here are the bad sides. Hey, your body, your choice. We're here to help if you need us. You can trust us. That doesn't sound so crazy to me. And I have a feeling deep down, again, conjecture, I'm not wearing the hat. I just think you agree. And for those who just blindly comply with absolutely everything, you are welcome to do so. I'm a libertarian in this regard. You do what, if you don't want to even hear what a doctor has to say, they hand you something and you just take it, go for it. That's beautiful. I got all the faith in the world in your decision making, honestly. The cool thing is, my doing this, even just this little bit of, this little bit I'm contributing, I'm doing it for you too. Because just maybe, something's going to come up in your life where you go, I was kind of duped there. My civil liberties are like, maybe I should care about them more. And you can look at me and be like, oh, yeah, you kind of think the same. And I'll just say, it wouldn't be, I told you so. It would be, I hear you. It should be a human right. Let's move forward together. Protect more people. Last thing to leave you with is how to handle this. Just be curious. If your doctor prescribes you something, ask what the good sides are. Ask what the bad sides are. Ask downstream what could happen. Ask if there are alternatives. Just be curious and find your peace. Like, it doesn't have to go too far. You can just find what's comfortable for you. And the cool thing is, I'm willing to bet that your doctor will respect you for doing that. And really, at the end of the day, we're just trying to find the mechanics that we feel comfortable to send our friends to. Communal trust. All right, let's bring this one in for a landing, shall we? The sign off. Virtue is a mean. Comfort with ambiguity is a sign of intelligence. Oh my God. That reminds me, I completely forgot about the twist that I promised earlier, and because it's related to... All right, here it goes. Remember, there was a third strategy for communicating these medical interventions. Negative framing. I remember I just left it off. But I'm going to make an inference. Look who's back. Okay, so it's going to be kind of on. So we'll rally cap it like in baseball. There we go. I look normal, right? So my study suggested, where we do have cold hard evidence, a 10% increase in compliance when the survey was positively framed, right? Therefore, we can infer the opposite effect. Let's just say we did a survey that was full disclosure and only negative framing. Wow, as I think about that, I'm taking this off because as I think about this, I'm willing to bet it would be a lot more than 10%. But let's just say, because the hat's off, we can just say, we can infer that the compliance will be a whole hell of a lot lower if it's negative framing only. The twist. In Canada, cigarette packs have big, gnarly, gross images of what cigarettes can do to you. Like pieces of faces missing, and it's really yucky. And I mean, just cigarettes in general, they are cast out of society. You're awful if you smoke it. You're killing other people, which is true, is awful. However, I was sitting here being an absolutist with my informed consent. Therefore, live by the sword, die by the sword. True honor. I have to admit, the way that tobacco is consumed through cigarettes, there's also nicotine in there. And yes, as we said earlier with my study, nicotine is highly addictive. However, as I said in my study, it's a nootropic. It stimulates our brains. It's a cognitive enhancer. That's inarguably a positive outcome, side effect from a cigarette. So if I'm an absolutist with informed consent, this would mean that I believe cigarette packs in Canada should have the gnarly pictures of deformed things that come from cigarettes. But it should also have the positive. It should say, nicotine is a cognitive enhancer. You should smoke. Disclaimer on this, because I'm not actually saying it, it's just for the effective. But I don't feel that way. Whew. I hope it does deter smoking. When I cost benefit smoking out, I'm like, okay, 99.9%, it's going to kill you. It's awful. You get nothing out of it. 0.1%, you get a nice little, but there are other ways to get that nicotine. Anyways, what I'm saying is there's nuance to this, and I don't think we should be talking about the positive aspects of cigarettes. So does there go my entire study in this entire podcast? Nuance. Truthfully, I haven't thought this through more, honestly. This is something I tacked on at the end because it's the truth, right? Like, I really haven't thought this out totally. But it does suggest that there has to be nuance to the way that things are framed, not only by us, not only by medical professionals, but also by government, and also when the two have to work together. So I have to own all of everything I've said, including my study, and admit this. Maybe what the government did during COVID-19, during my wife's preeclampsia scare, was just. And maybe, just maybe, I'm just upset at how I was treated. There are those goosebumps again. And now to bring it all back again one last time, the meta-ness of what I just did. I just totally ruined my whole podcast, my whole research study. But I was honest with you. I need to do more thinking on this. Aesop's Fables 1, 2, 3. There's a little esoteria for you, but it's relevant. There's an old saying, when somebody is admitting that they're wrong, that they're eating their hat. I have to eat my hat. Well, it's kind of fitting, right? That it's empirical science is getting eaten, because the human experience is an incredibly complex and sometimes abstract endeavor. That doesn't mean we should maybe we shouldn't totally get rid of the hat. Maybe we should just be respectful of the hat. But we need to also acknowledge the social human art side of it as well. With all that, I think we should get back to the old sign-off, shall we? Let's bring it back down for a landing. We kind of did one of these. Back up. Virtue is a mean. Comfort with ambiguity is a sign of intelligence. Credit where credit's due, even when it's inconvenient. And don't take yourself so seriously. Y'all come back now, you hear? Oh, and yeah, for those people who comply no matter what, send me $1,000. Positive framing, it will bring you very good luck. Understand the system so you can work the system.